The Kurds are the largest ethnic minority in Syria. However, their music was officially forbidden until 2011. Even today, there are many restrictions on all Syrian official radio stations and TVs of their music, their language, and their culture in general. Today, I will talk about Kurdish music in Syria and the musicians who keep making music and singing in spite of all restrictions and discrimination that they face. Each of these musicians has a story worth knowing. Each Kurdish song has a story worth hearing. My name is Salah, and I will share some of these stories and songs with you. I myself am a Syrian Kurdish musician, and I will introduce you to a small personal story which can summarize the story of Forbidden Sounds. In 1988, I was 10 years old. I told the director of my school that I wanted to participate in the school festival. The director asked me, "What you will sing?" I told him that I prepared a beautiful Kurdish song. The director looked at me and said, "You can only participate in the festival with an Arabic song. You know that it is forbidden to speak and sing in Kurdish in the school." At that time, I had not memorized any Arabic songs, as we would sing in our Kurdish mother tongue at home. I didn't participate in the festival, and I cried because I couldn't sing my favorite song, Kavokim Lele.
شبتورم واي واي اسمع شو خليلي قردنا بمورم واي واي كبوكم ليلي ليلي لمليلي ليلي مليلي ليلي مليلي ليلي مليلي كبوكا قورم واي واي لسه ربانا وبنبانا لسه تشاوز وزانا ازدقيرم واي واي اسمع شو خليلي كشكا كردم واي واي اسمع شو قملي دمر محيراني
The Kurdish musicians in Syria had a difficult situation as they experienced nationalistic discrimination. Although many of them had nothing to do with politics, they were treated like politicians and nationalists. Simply because they insisted on singing in Kurdish, they were taking part of a forbidden culture in Syria. Whenever are you in Kamishli, Kobane, Afrin, or in any Syrian city, you are in danger as soon as you're singing in Kurdish. Most of the Kurdish musicians in Syria suffered from discrimination, and many of them were arrested and placed in prisons where they experienced violence and torture. For example, Muhammad Sheikho was one of the prominent musicians of Kurdish music in Syria in the 70s and 80s. He was arrested and imprisoned more than once because of his songs and his support of Kurdish people in Syria. Muhammad Sheikho pushed to leave Syria and spent many years in exile in Lebanon, Iraq, Iran, and Iraqi Kurdistan. Muhammad Sheikho's songs are still a symbol of Kurdish suffering against the injustice and discrimination they experience today. Before listening to one of Muhammad Shekho's songs, I think it's good to know that almost 99% of Kurdish music recordings produced in Syria were produced secretly, in a closed room, in a house with a normal tape recorder and no professional equipment. My soul, you are my wound and my pain. Without you, who knows me? Without you, what does my existence mean? You are the beautiful Hamrin mountain. You are Mahabad and the One Lake. Your name is so beautiful. It's my address and my identity. Your beautiful face and your black eyes are my future and my guarantee. You are the historical Nowroz. You are the Khalat and Sipan mountains. Muhammad Shekho was not the only one who suffered from discrimination as a Kurdish musician. If we were to make a list with the names of Kurdish musicians who suffered from discrimination, we would be here for a very long time. But in today's radio program, I will mention just 4 musicians in order to create a comprehensive understanding about what it means to be part of a minority in the Middle East, what it means to belong to an ethnic group whose sound was forbidden. Beside Muhammad Shekho, I will talk about Said Youssef, Mahmoud Aziz Shakir, and Jamil Horo, who also suffered from discrimination and pushed to leave Syria due to ban of the Kurdish music and their right to sing in Kurdish, and also because of the fear of the arrest. From the mid-60s to the end of the 80s were the most difficult times for Syrian Kurdish musicians. During this period, political pressure from the secret intelligence mukhabarat increased, and this forced many musicians to emigrate or seek refuge in neighborhood countries such as Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey. Beirut was the first station outside of Syria for many Kurdish musicians. It also became a meeting place for many of them. There, they started to establish bands and play Kurdish music for the local people. One of these musicians was Said Youssef. He moved to Beirut in 1971 and established a musical group named Jivata Nowroz. Within a short time, Said Youssef's name became very prominent in the Lebanese media, both alone or as a bouzuk player with Lebanese groups. At the end of 1973, UNESCO produced an album of his solo bouzuk performances. In 1977, after Lebanese civil war, Said Youssef returned to Syria once more, and the Damascus radio station recorded his bouzuk improvisations, but he was still not allowed to sing in Kurdish.
من شور جبانا وأبكى غصب داني قال لي طير العظمانة قالوا جم كردستاني تشكى من شور جبانا وأبكى غصب داني كرين دلالال وانجيال والله الفينيتنا أفضاني سلابلوي وهبالا كجون كرين دلالال وانجيال والله الفينيتنا أفضاني كردشين مسلاغا لحمو كرباغا بولاد بكن آغا ودجمن راكن فرماني كردشين مسلاغا لحمو كرباغا بولاد بكن آغا ودجمن بكن فرماني شوف دلورينم شعبي كاذبينم كردستاني فلسطينم قرباني كردستاني أزئيك شوف دلورينم شعبي كاذبينم كردستاني فلسطينم قرباني كردستاني قلبي طيب العظمانة قرهوش كردستاني تجكى من شور شبانا وأبكى غزبداني قلبي طيب العظمانة قرهوش كردستاني تركي من شور شبانا وأبكى غزبداني.
The cultural and the national discrimination against the Kurds led to the emergence of Kurdish national songs. These songs became important markers of the 60s, 70s, and 80s for the Kurds in Syria. They somehow created an identity for their music. Edward Said, the Palestinian American academic, political activist, and writer, said in his book Culture and Resistance, when a national and political identity of a nation is under threat, culture tends to be a tool of resistance in the face of attempts to obliterate, eliminate, and exclude. This was the case with the Kurdish music. It was comprised of songs that told stories about resistance against the Syrian regime and of the suffering of Kurdish people in Syria. Apart from musicians, the poets were also under a lot of pressure, and many of them too were arrested and imprisoned. A good example in this context is Jagarkhwin and By Rodi Moh'd. Both experienced suffering at the hand of the secret intelligence mukhabarat, but keep writing in Kurdish anyways. Later, many of their poems became famous songs. For example, the poet By Rodi Moh'd wrote his most famous song in prison. Habs u Zindan, the prison is so dark, which many Kurdish musicians went on to record in their albums.
حبس وزندان كورو طريق من عين واجعشكو أبينا قولي كتما بلاي حبس وزندان كورو طريق من عين واجعشكو أبينا قولي كتما بلاي قلام بابو بين ضابو سريتشي متقو قلام ورا بير قزبي وخناي متقو قلام ورا بير قزبي وخناي من كاسكو صور حيران قلا من قشاش قلا بخلكي تعالى بمن فرقاش قلا قولها من كاسكو صار حيران قولها من قشاش قولها مبخلك طالب من تفاشا دنيا للسار مرون حيران وقت لي مرهاشا دس قولي برنادم قخون دماشا دس قولي برنادم قخون دماشا.
The prison is so dark, I cannot sleep. I'm thinking in my flower. I am in love with her. My flower is on the top of the mountains. It is so beautiful. It smells so good. I asked the flower to come to me. She said, I will come at the right time. The flower has its own time. Beside Lebanon and Iraq, Turkey was also an important destination for many Syrian Kurdish musicians, especially for those who came from Afrin and Kobani. Jamil Horo, for example, is considered one of the most important Kurdish singers in Syria. He started his artistic life in Afrin, where he once lived, and became famous for his strong and melodious voice, through which he transmitted many Kurdish epic and folk tales. Jamil Horo focused on traditional songs at the beginning of his musical career in the 60s and developed his own unique and special style of performance. Sadly, he was arrested, imprisoned, and tortured as a result of security pursuit. He was forced to flee to Turkey with his family. In Turkey, he recorded an album with a famous Kurdish singer Ayşe Şan and became famous among the Kurds everywhere. There in Turkey, he collaborated with the famous Turkish musician and baglama player Arif Sağ and connected with many other Turkish musicians. Jamil Horo didn't stay in Turkey for long. Due to the pressure of the local authorities and because of the challenge that came along with the living as a Kurdish musician in Turkey. As a result, he moved to Iraqi Kurdistan and settled down in Zakho city, where he spent a period of time until he went back to Syria in the 80s.
خودی دینه مالا هر سه قیزی که پیریانم لغو کرم بوسته که وافریان الکشین قاطع عزمینی حفتانه شوال مقامینی به شبه خبردان سر باجار جزیر و بوتانه کتن دوی قصرها رنگین برجا بلکوار حوتانه جو مقام دیل بران را بنزین آزدانه دویل ویل 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 ها ویل که سریم قربان بالو زینا خدا ندیل برا ربنه که دیخم شوانه البرسه ولنگاد به پرپریم مانو شمدانانه سفه کایت خانه بفکرن سرجه دیل برا ربنزین آزدانه زین کرن وقت ما مریانه را کرن تف تخت و جون وینمو مشمدانه ودن تابوتا شای پریانه بدر خسنج باجار جزیره فریان الکشین قاطع عزمین حفتانه آنین باجار مغرب القصر رنگیل برجا بلغل دویرا گران لکیل کامه میکرن مسافر و میوانه ویلی 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 تموت ویل 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 ویل
Baghdad radio station played a big role in the recording of songs for Syrian Kurdish musicians. If you look closely, you will see that professional recordings of Kurdish music in Syria between 1970 and 1990 was recorded outside of the country. and most of these recordings were made at Baghdad radio station. Mahmoud Aziz Shakir is considered the star of Syrian Kurdish music at Baghdad radio station. Mahmoud Aziz Shakir as a singer and his brother Muhammad Ali Shakir as a composer are considered among the most important innovators for Syrian Kurdish songs. In fact, Mahmoud was the only Syrian Kurdish singer who was accepted as an official singer at the radio station. The station's music group recorded several of his songs, and through these songs, he won his fame. Mahmoud's brother, Muhammad, remained the unknown soldier who composed the most important and unique of his brother's songs. The two brothers' cooperation has made them a successful team, and they work together till today. It was forbidden for Mahmoud Aziz Shakir to sing national songs on the radio, which is why many of his songs are love songs.
حسن شوقا وبينين حسرة جلدي ذرينين وزع خبزة غدينين رز بالتابوكي زابا 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 والعرب شروكي زابا 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 في رز بالتابوكي زابا 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 والعرب شروكي زابا 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 عني تفزر وزيد تلقى وقاد ونيده هنار الرواتده وشك مجهوله وشك نيد جدده رد بالتابوك زابا 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 والعالم شروك زابا 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 في رد بالتابوك زابا 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 والعالم شروك تدبقلو نرقزه شقور بونا كيفزه تدبق خيمة غيفزه رز بالتابوك زابا 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 ولعند شروك زابا 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 في رز بالتابوك زابا 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 ولعند شروك زابا زابا زابا.
This was a wedding song by Mahmoud Aziz Shakir. The weddings were very important ceremonies for Kurds, especially for musicians. All of the musicians we mentioned in our program today played at weddings in order to earn a living. As a wedding was the only place where the Kurds were allowed to play their music. It was forbidden in all official Syrian theaters, stages, and cultural centers. For this reason, weddings represented freedom for Kurds. At the ceremony, they introduced different cultural activities such as music, literature, dance, and even theater from time to time. They became very special and varied events. The repertoire of Kurdish wedding songs is very rich. They have many styles and rhythms, but the more characteristic songs are the one with a fast tempo. Even Arab musicians and people from North Syria have been known to sing these fast Kurdish songs at their weddings. In the 90s, many musicians began to sing popular Kurdish songs and melodies in Arabic and wrote new Arabic texts because the Kurdish language was forbidden. Based on this knowledge, it's worth mentioning that many songs by the famous Syrian Arab singer Omar Suleiman were originally Kurdish songs. In 2013, Omar Suleiman performed with the Syrian Kurdish keyboardist Rezan Said at the Nobel Peace Prize Awards ceremony. There, he sang the very famous Kurdish songs Warne Warne.
مثل الهوى والمية شي صبيرني بلاها قالوا لي بدنا نجوزك شي صبيرني بلاها قالوا لي بدنا نجوزك شي صبيرني بلاها مثل الهوى والمية ما اقدر اصبر بلاها ورني 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 لاني واسمار اسمار بقوري نادم دي ورني 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 اسمار بقوري نادم ورني لاني واسمار
This song has a strong relation with our program today, with the story of the forbidden sounds. Everybody at the Nobel Prize concert was dancing to the beat of this song, but not many people knew that the original singer and the composer of this song was killed by the Syrian secret intelligence Mukhabarat after he composed a song supporting the Kurdish revolution in the Iraqi Kurdistan. We have come to the end of our program, and I want to leave you with the reminder that although the dictatorship, the wars, the conflicts have killed citizens, nobody can stop the sounds of the people. Nobody can stop the music. The pain, the suffering will diminish one day, but the music and the sounds and the songs will stay forever. This was Salah Ammo. It was a great pleasure to be with you and to share with you an aspect of Kurdish music in Syria.